Please listen to the story of my marriage, which fell apart just after reaching the peak of happiness by building our dream home. A significant event in anyone's life. My name is Jennifer. I'm 30 years old. My family consists of my 35-year-old husband, Keith, and our 3-year-old daughter, Christina. We were about to build our long-awaited house. Mentioning this often brings reactions like, "Wow, that must be nice. Your life seems so perfect and happy." However, that's far from the truth for me. Lately, I've been endlessly worried about the construction of our house and issues with my in-laws. The first step towards the collapse began when we left our daughter with my in-laws. Keith and I both work, and we hardly have any time on weekdays. We usually went out for property hunting and consultations about the house design on weekends. Taking our daughter with us would often lead to her getting bored and fussy, so we usually left her with my parents, who live nearby. However, one morning, we were informed that my father was unwell and needed to go to the hospital, so they couldn't take care of Christina. I thought we might have to cancel our plans for the day. But then, Keith suggested, "How about my parents take care of her?" To be honest, I don't get along well with my in-laws. They believe that once you marry into their family, they can say whatever they want to you without any need for restraint. What era are they living in? Moreover, I felt hesitant about suddenly asking them to take care of a 3-year-old. But postponing today's plans would also delay the completion of our house. Reluctantly, I decided to leave our daughter with Keith's parents for the day. After finishing our errands, I bought some expensive sweets as a gift and headed straight to my in-laws' house. By the evening, we arrived, and perhaps the sweets worked because my in-laws were in a good mood and welcomed us warmly. After thanking them politely, on our way home, Christina said, "Mom, where's Grandpa and Grandma's room in our new house?" "What are you talking about, Christina? Did Grandpa and Grandma ask you that?" "What did you answer?" I said I didn't know. It seemed like that was the end of the conversation for her, as she went back to talking to her stuffed penguin. My daughter refers to my parents as Grampy and Granny. So, Grandpa and Grandma could only mean Keith's parents. Maybe they were wondering if there's a room for them when they come to stay at our house? At that time, I thought that might be the reason. Since then, my in-laws started visiting us more often, targeting the evenings on weekdays and holidays when Keith and I were home. Currently, we live in a small, somewhat old rented apartment to save money for our house. Whenever my in-laws visit, they immediately make themselves comfortable in our dining or living area and start asking to see the plans for our house under construction. Before I can object, Keith happily shows them the plans and begins explaining. Why does he have to show them every time? It's already frustrating enough that they come over so often. Then, my mother-in-law bombards us with questions, as if she's at a parliamentary question time. And it's me, not Keith, who has to face these questions. It feels like there's a speaker somewhere calling out. Mother-in-law. Looking at this blueprint, the kitchen's location seems impractical. Please change it. There are too few guest rooms, add more. Everyone finds guest rooms comforting as they age. Also, having only one kid's room won't be enough if you have another child. What are your thoughts on combating the declining birth rate? I'm sorry, that last part was a lie. Thankfully, I haven't been grilled about measures against the declining birth rate. Now, it seems it's my turn to answer. Jennifer. Based on a mutual agreement and proper procedures, we've already consulted with the contractor and started the foundation work. It's no longer possible to change the layout, so please understand. I responded with slight anger. This led to more probing questions about furniture and appliances. My mother-in-law claims to be a professional when it comes to houses. As someone with many friends, I've visited various homes and thoroughly observed different rooms. I can easily tell a comfortable room with good furniture. This house, this room, is just wrong. It will drain your luck and work won't go well. Terrible. To claim to be a professional, yet so critical. My mother-in-law was so insistent that, half-jokingly, I started to say, then how about we make it a duplex and split the costs? Just kidding. But my parents-in-law were furious. Are you asking your parents for money? You ungrateful child. A duplex? I hate such formal and lonely arrangements. That day, my parents-in-law left early. Good riddance. They're not even like parents to me, so why should I owe them any filial piety? Later that night, after putting our daughter to bed, Keith spoke to me in an irritated tone. My parents are just trying to help with their advice, so don't be so cold. Cold? I don't intend to be. But aren't your parents the ones being rude? They're always so critical about our house. It's like they're looking down on me because I'm your wife. They're my parents, so it's natural. It's rude to dismiss their advice like that. You're heartless. Cool off and think about what you've done. After that, Keith turned away and refused to speak further. Sure, they're his parents. But we're a separate family. And we haven't received any financial help from my in-laws. It's disrespectful to have a say without contributing financially. Keith told me to cool off, but I was too upset by the unreasonable demands to fall asleep that night. Eventually, our house was completed. Our family excitedly moved in, but then Keith said something shocking. From today, my parents will live with us. The larger room on the second floor will be for my dad, and the smaller one for my mom. Wait. What are you saying out of the blue? We decided to make one of the rooms on the second floor Christina's room. I never agreed to live together. And your parents might say they don't like the rooms as usual. They won't. They've already seen the rooms, so no worries. Your parents have seen the rooms? When? The day before we had the house viewing, I guess. Wait. You mean to say your parents visited this house the day before our viewing? Yeah. They wanted to see it, so I lent them the keys I had. It's fine, just looking doesn't hurt anything. Keith, seemingly annoyed that the conversation had dragged on, went back to his unfinished task of setting up the TV. Just looking doesn't hurt anything? No, something did get lost just now. And quite significantly. I didn't want to see Keith's face, so I left the unpacking in the kitchen as it was and went upstairs. I locked the door and tried to organize my thoughts, swirling with confusion and anger. I was grateful that Christina was at daycare because of the unpacking. It gave me a moment to be alone and think. Keith's sudden declaration of living together had completely exhausted my patience with him and my in-laws. I couldn't stand another second with them. But we had just made a huge commitment by buying a house together. I needed to think calmly and carefully, to distinguish between what should and shouldn't be said for the sake of my and my daughter's future. Locked in my room, I deeply reflected on the situation, waiting for my in-laws to arrive. As Keith had said, my in-laws arrived after noon with a truck loaded with moving boxes. At least come out to greet us. You lack basic manners. Oh, it's not even close to being unpacked. How slow can you be? After complaining for a while, They entered our new house as if it were the most natural thing. Listening from the second floor, I went down to the entrance. Father, Mother. I wasn't informed about living together with you two. My opening remark came out colder than I expected. My father-in-law, seemingly irritated by my tone, quickly started to blame me. I told Keith. That should be enough. No, it's a problem. I only heard about your intention to live with us this morning from Keith. And I have no desire to live with such disrespectful people. What did you say? Keith agreed. You, a mere wife, think you can defy your husband? Exactly. Such a presumptuous wife. If you don't like it, why don't you leave, Jennifer? This is hopeless. I've always thought this, but our ways of thinking are too different, making conversation impossible. While I was silently contemplating my response, Keith rushed over in a panic. What are you doing, Jennifer? Don't start a fight with my parents. A fight? This is hardly equal. I'm being unilaterally berated simply because I'm his wife. And now, my husband is blaming me again. This makes me realize once more that he and his parents are the same. Keith, I can't live with your parents. What do you mean you can't? Don't make things difficult for me. As my wife, you're supposed to obey me, aren't you? I am a person before I'm your wife. Do you think you can force me to obey against my will? Hearing our exchange, my father-in-law yelled. We don't need a wife like her in our family. Keith agreed with him, saying, Maybe you're right. A wife who can't cherish my parents might as well get a divorce. Just what I was waiting for. All right. Then, let's get a divorce. I stated it clearly. A husband suggesting divorce. And a wife agreeing to it. I prayed that my smartphone in my pocket was recording our conversation. I continued with a hopeful heart. Since we'll be strangers, please return the $350,000 I lent to Keith for the house's construction costs immediately. What? They exclaimed in surprise, their voices filled with astonishment. Keith looked at me, his face turning pale, surpassing white. Unaware of the situation, my in-laws needed a detailed explanation. It seems there's a misunderstanding, but Keith hasn't contributed a single penny to the purchase of this house. This house was built solely on my savings because this man, with no plan in mind, had absolutely no savings. As a working couple, we agreed to contribute equally to our living expenses from our income and save the rest under our own names. However, he squandered his share instead of saving it. Hey, Jennifer, there's no need to go that far. It's all true. Yet, when it came to buying a house, you insisted on having it under your name. That's why I lent you the money. We have a loan agreement, so it can't be dismissed as if it never happened. This can't be happening. Leaving my stunned husband and in-laws behind, I quickly packed my valuables, clothes, my daughter's favorite toys, and clothes into a suitcase and a duffel bag. Carrying my daughter's beloved penguin stuffed animal under my arm, I loaded everything into my compact car and drove away swiftly, bidding farewell to the newly built house that was supposed to be our home. Then, I went to pick up my daughter from daycare and headed to my parents' house. They were quite surprised to see me suddenly appear at their doorstep in casual clothes, carrying loads of luggage. I know it's sudden, and if it's a bother, I can go to a hotel. Hesitantly, my parents quickly stopped me from leaving. I later found out that at that moment, my parents were worried I might do something drastic with my daughter. In reality, it was the opposite. I had sworn to protect her at all costs. I explained the situation to my parents, including my desire to divorce my worthless husband and to take full custody of my daughter, Christina. My parents promised their full support and suggested that I stay with them for a while. This offer was a huge relief to me as I was working. That night, I compiled everything that had happened between me, my husband, and my in-laws into a document. I also backed up the audio recordings of our conversations from my phone to my computer and an external media device. With these documents in hand, I visited several law offices using my vacation days and weekends until I found a trustworthy lawyer to formally take on my case. A week flew by since I left my new home, and on that day, after finishing work, I found someone waiting for me outside my company. It was Keith. Though I'd prefer to call him my ex-husband, we were technically still married. I was afraid of what he might do in a fit of rage, so I chose a public place, a cafe, to talk. I also didn't forget to turn on the recording feature on my smartphone. I asked him calmly, "Is there something you wanted to talk about?" "Yeah. It's about the house. I'm going to transfer it to you, Jennifer." "Can we call it even with the money then?" "Sorry, but I can't bring myself to live in that house anymore." "Your parents were there before us, right? Why does that little detail matter?" "It matters to me, so it's impossible." After saying this and taking a sip of coffee, I looked closely at my soon-to-be ex-husband. His hair was messy with strands sticking out, he had a stubble beard, and his complexion was far from good. He was wearing a suit, but his shirt was wrinkled, showing he hadn't bothered with ironing or dry cleaning. I couldn't help but think how worn out he looked, regardless of how he had been living. "Please, Jennifer. I can't pay back such a large sum of money easily. You knew it was a large amount when you borrowed it, right? I even suggested that the house could be under both of our names or just mine, but you insisted it had to be your house, under your name. I thought I would be the homeowner." I didn't mean the divorce threat seriously. "Why are you taking it so seriously?" "I am serious. I've had enough, and I will definitely divorce you. It's not just about not having any prospects. I can't imagine living with such rude parents." "So, what now?" "Christina is waiting, so if we're done here, I need to go." "Wait. I will take Christina." His words sent a chill through me. When I got home, I asked my parents to be vigilant to prevent Christina from being forcibly taken away. A few days after Keith's visit, the daycare informed me that people resembling my in-laws had come by. I left work early and hurried to the daycare. Thankfully, because I had informed the daycare in advance, my in-laws were waiting in a separate room, and they hadn't let them see Christina. As I entered the room, my father-in-law immediately started yelling at me. "Give back our granddaughter, you thief." "Thief? What do you mean?" "I haven't stolen anything. If not a thief, then a scam artist. You must have earned that money through shady means. There's no way someone your age could have that much money otherwise." "No, the money I lent to Keith was all mine, earned fair and square. It was my savings, contributions from my parents, and a part of it was from a gift given by my grandmother while she was still alive." "A gift?" "Yes, every year they would transfer an amount that wouldn't incur gift tax into my account. That total, along with the money from selling my stocks and my savings, is the amount I had. I had no idea it was really Jennifer's money." "Didn't you ever consider giving Keith a living gift?" "It's still possible to do so now." "Grr." Father-in-law groaned and fell silent. My in-laws were fond of luxury and pretense, loving extravagance above all else. Being an average salaryman's family without any passive income, it's unlikely they had much savings. The concept of living gifting probably never crossed their minds. I'm sorry, but I will be divorcing Keith. I will take Christina and raise her. Please, do not come to the daycare anymore. It's causing trouble. After saying that, I put Christina in the car and quickly returned to my parents' house. Despite my warnings, Keith and my in-laws attempted to visit several times. Each time, I tried to speak with them calmly to send them away, but it wasn't uncommon to be grabbed or subjected to verbal abuse. I recorded all these incidents on my smartphone. About a month after leaving the new house, I sent a letter through my lawyer demanding repayment of the debt and agreeing to divorce. Keith largely agreed, but showed a willingness to fight over custody. However, when I mentioned pursuing compensation if we went to court, he backed down significantly. After all, I had plenty of evidence, and they had no savings to pay. It took some time, but I was able to secure the repayment of the money I lent to Keith, win custody of Christina, and successfully divorce. The repayment from Keith took longer than expected because the sale of the new house didn't go as planned. Initially, I thought Keith and his parents would live there together, but they didn't. The reason was simple. Neither Keith nor his parents could afford the $350,000 purchase price. Keith had no savings, and even if his parents sold their old house, it wouldn't cover the amount. Eventually, the new house was listed for less than the purchase price and, after several price reductions, finally sold. The difference in price and the selling fees were covered by Keith borrowing from a bank. Losing the house and saddled with debt, Keith ended up living with his parents in their dilapidated house. To make matters worse, Keith's sister returned home with her two sons, a middle schooler and a high schooler. The cramped, run-down house was now filled with 6 adults, and their constant bickering became notorious in the neighborhood. From that point on, they no longer interfered with us. Given their inability to pay proper child support, they probably had no face to show. For years have passed since then, and Christina is now in the 2nd grade. We're living in a rented apartment near my parents' house. On days when I return home late, my parents look after her. Despite the challenges, we're living happily together. Although I thought I'd remain single, I've started dating a 36-year-old man with a 1st-grade daughter and a history of divorce. We met during daycare drop-offs and pickups, and he confessed his feelings for me. Recently, we've been going out as a family of 4. One day, Christina casually mentioned, if we ever build a house, it would be nice if all 4 of us had our own rooms, and we could have a dog. Those words touched my heart because the man had recently proposed to me. I've asked him to wait for my answer, considering our daughters, but my mind is made up. I approached Christina, hugged her small back, and said, "Yes, we should build a house again. This time, we'll plan it as a family, making sure it's a home where everyone can be happy."